Hey everyone, welcome to In 10 Minutes with Tony D. Today I'm going to use my storytelling abilities to map out the origins of religion as I imagine them. And again, this is my story. I'm just making it up based on things I know. So some of you in the comments of the previous one of these about the Civil War were like, "You're just making this up." I said that in the description of the video and in the video itself. So I don't know what you're complaining about. This is exactly what you get. I'm a storyteller. So anyhow, the origins of religion. So, recently Kanye West sort of brought religion back into the mainstream by putting it all on his album and becoming religious again. And by the way, I'm agnostic. I'm not advocating for any particular religion or anything like that. I believe they're all wrong because, God, if you believe in God, God's infallible and man created religion. So obviously religion is fallible. So, religion is what it is. Here's a little Joan coughing and hacking off camera. Religion is a creation of man. But why did they create it? So, as we see the absence of religion in society, I'm reminded of, I often call people sheep, right? I'm sure you've done that too. So people are sheep, and some people, they end up following religion because they're sheep and that's what's popular or that's what's normal or whatever. But now that's all fading away. Does that make the sheep any smarter? No. In fact, it probably makes it worse because at least when the sheep were following religion, you kind of knew where they would go. You kind of understood that there was a moral center, even if those people were just kind of blindly following it. They were following something that, there are two kinds of people who could follow religion, basically. There's a kind that they just give it lip service and they do whatever the hell they want anyway. And then there's the kind who believe in it and try to be good. Now, both sides of that coin can cause problems for people. You could try to be good and end up protesting, let's say, gay marriage. And you could say, well, religion, that's a bunch of BS, and you could still be a good person. So, getting rid of religion isn't necessarily the answer because there's a vacuum there that will be filled by something else. So like in today's world, for some people, it's filled with video games. Video game culture is kind of filled in the void for some people because video games are enormously popular. And they've developed an old culture of their own. And some of that culture is good and some of it's bad. Some of it's good because, you got a guy like PewDiePie. He's a really nice guy, seems to be a generous soul, does charity work and, tries to be a good guy, tries to use his position as top of the internet in a good way. But then there's the dark side of gamer culture, and you get things like swatting, right? You had guys who would call SWAT teams out on people as a joke, and it's no joke, People get hurt, people get killed. That's not cool. And as a gaming society, we try to deal with that. But, gaming society is relatively new, so there's not a tremendous amount of tools within the society for dealing with that. It may very well happen again, maybe not because the guys who did it got severely punished, and that definitely sends a warning, but that they got punished outside the culture. Within the culture, there has to be a movement to go, oh no, you can't do that, man. That's kind of what religion is in its own way, right? It's a way to live, and the stories help you live, whether those stories happened or not. So the way I see the origins of religion is you have to go back in your head to prehistoric times where people were nomadic. They lived in tribes. And, there would be families within this tribe. right? But there was no marriage, so, you know, who had sex with who and whose kid was whose, that was kind of mixed up because, you know, you could F anybody you wanted. Essentially, if you were a guy and you were strong enough, who was going to stop you? There were no rules. The only rule was, well, you know, the natural instinct of a family member to protect a daughter. But even that, you know, after a time, because people didn't live that long, you know, you were lucky to live to like 30, 35, you know, rape just would happen. It wasn't even rape. They didn't have a word for it. People just had sex with one another. It wasn't all rape. I don't mean to say it was all non-consensual, but I'm saying that, you know, people had no structure, and especially the sheep, they had no structure for which to operate. They just operated according to what the tribe did. So whoever was head of the tribe, if he was some a-hole who just did whatever he wanted, then everybody underneath him would tend to do that, because it's almost like a father figure as the head of the tribe, right? The oldest, strongest guy kind of sets the tone for everybody else. Now, some guys over the years were smarter, and maybe they had more people with them. Maybe they had better food. Maybe they lived in an area of the world that had better temperatures and it wasn't as harsh climate. Maybe they lived a little longer, got a bit smarter. And at some point, you know, one of these tribes got a little unwieldy. You know, you got a lot of people here. They're doing all sorts of crazy things. So maybe you got a shifty old guy who's head of the tribe, and he has lived in a unnaturally long life for that time period. Maybe he's like 38 and he's still going strong, not going to retire anytime soon, but he realizes that, you know, there's a lot of guys underneath him that are itching for a spot, even though he has some friends and, you know, over the years, he maybe saved some people's lives or helped them. Maybe he consolidated some tribes together, took in some people. And over the time, he's created some rules, but, you know, these young guys, they come up fast and they're unruly, just like the guys in the gaming culture, right? They say and do whatever they want because they think they can get away with it. So imagine then, you know, a guy hits like 16, 17, 18, he's in the prime of his life. You try to tell him, hey man, take it easy. He ain't gonna listen to you. Thus, religion was created. One of these shifty old guys said, no, wait. Don't rape that woman. Don't kill that man. Why? Because the sun god says no. The sun god? Who is the sun god? The young man would say. Well, look up into the sky. There he is. That is our sun god. He gives us light and heat. Gives us life. Would you defy the sun god? Oh, this is just a kid. He's not very smart. And obviously, there's no educational system. But the old guy, he's not educated either, but he's just been around longer. And he kind of gets the deal, and he needs something over this kid. So he makes up this story. The sun god. The sun god tells you, no, don't kill those people. Well, we've killed people before, the young man would say, and obviously in that society, people probably would have been killed or died. You probably would have fought other tribes. But the sun god says you should only kill those who are deserving of killing. You know, maybe it's a self-defense, defense of murder. Maybe it's more of like you only kill certain people, only the people who live across the river or whomever, right? So through that, religion is formed and these morals start to form because you don't want these young men running wild. You want to control them because you got too many people now. And you've been around long enough to see bigger tribes that have fallen to pieces, right? They fight over who's going to run things. You don't want that. And thus, you know, kings are created, right? So, I'm the first king. Who will be the next king? My son, my oldest son, because that's fair, right? You pick the oldest because nobody else can contest who's the oldest. And typically the oldest is the next wisest person. And they pick males because males are stronger, physically. And so that's kind of how society starts to build itself. But the religion is important because it creates a sense of, well, there's something bigger than you. So even though you're physically strong and you're younger than me, the sun god will punish you. And therefore you can't do all these horrible things that you just want to do. You can't just bang all these girls. You can't just go raping women in other villages. You have to live according to the sun god, because he wills it, and he's in the sky, and you can't deny that the sun is in the sky. You can't deny that. So that smart old guy did that for a few years, and over the years, that kind of story just gets passed down and passed down and passed down. Now, some people obviously are going to be smart and evil. So they hear the story. They've never, and the story gets more elaborate. These stories of the sun god coming down and smiting people. These evil old guys know that's not true. And they eventually pick up, wait a minute, this story was used to keep me in line. I can use it to keep other people in line and make them do what I want. So then those older guys say stuff like, well, of course you can't kill anyone, but the sun god says you can kill those people. Does the sun god give me permission to take this woman? If you give me money, gold, meat, whatever passed for a kind of currency then. And then, you've got the build-up of ceremony around that, because the ceremony was a way of reinforcing the religion and reinforcing the control of some people. So, was that a good or bad thing? I think now, I used to be like a lot of liberals. I used to say, oh man, religion's just so bad. Why do people join religions? But now I see it a little differently. I don't see it as good. I just see it as necessary, because you have all these sheep who run around and they're directionless. And you can't, it's almost like you can't teach them. You can't teach people who are sheep to open their eyes and start thinking for themselves. It's very hard. Very hard. Something has to happen to them to make them open their eyes. So, barring that, you really can't teach them. So, you instead transfer a dogma to them that they will basically listen to. It's almost like an autopilot or a default that will drive them, so at least they kind of don't hurt anybody or themselves or you. And that's kind of what religion became. It got out of hand. Certainly, there were tons of excesses. There's still a few excesses out there. And, life is just a series of actions and reactions to reactions and back and forth. And that's what history is. So, I'm not here to suggest that everybody get religion. But what I'm suggesting is perhaps we need something, to keep the sheep from sort of drifting away and hurting themselves. But, you can't get so arrogant as to you be the one, you be that crafty old guy, because you have to think down the road, how is this religion or whatever going to impact people? You have to give people a choice too, and give them an opportunity to get out of that if they do start thinking for themselves. So, it's complicated. But anyhow, that's my origin story for religion.